Brandon, Cray, have you guys heard of the show called Running Point on Netflix? It's starring Kate Hudson.
I I watched about the first half of the first season. I never ended up finishing it.
Well, it's not a very good basketball show. Like the basketball is obviously not realistic at all. But that aside, we're in a season two. You know, the premise of the show is about the family that owns this fictional professional basketball team called the Los Angeles Waves. And in this season, they are playing very well. And there's this clip at the end of one episode that has the standings, assuming in the Western Conference. And at the top of the Western Conference is Los Angeles. Second to last, though, is a team called Oklahoma, who is 23-50.
That is some like next level pettiness by whoever, I'm assuming Lakers fan created the show. Also shows you that fiction is not very close to reality sometimes. Very loosely based on, I guess.
And it makes sense that they want the team that's at the center of this television show to be good. So, okay, I'll give them a pass for Los Angeles being in first. But someone made the conscious decision to make Oklahoma second to last.
Yeah. It's somebody. It's somebody who is scared. That's what it was. They're trying to project what they want into the fictional reality.
Not to totally roast, there are real Lakers fans all over the world, and not to totally roast them, but I do wonder how many actual Los Angeles residents were surprised that Oklahoma is playing the Lakers and they're not at the bottom. How is Oklahoma this? They beat the Lakers in game one? Like, I think a lot of casual LA fans might be having that experience. Number one being Ric Flair, who's very upset last night, tweeting and wanting to trade Luka because Luka wasn't playing while the Oklahoma team was beating Los Angeles. So, I think it's probably, I don't know how many people would notice that are just more casual Lakers basketball fans.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar and Daily Thunder editor-in-chief Cray Allred. Brandon, Cray, how are you guys doing? On this day after Shea didn't score 20 points or more.
I'm doing well. It was shocking. It was so weird. I had my tweet ready to go. He was sitting at 18 points for so long, and he wasn't forcing it or anything. I was ready to blast out 14th straight playoff game with 20 points or more, and it just didn't happen. But he wasn't forcing the issue. He just kind of let the game come to him, and he ended with 18.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he didn't, because we know he could have got it, right? The fourth quarter wasn't close, and he's extremely capable and has been extremely capable for the longest of any player ever to go get number 19 and 20. But I'm heartened. Now, one, the record doesn't really count the playoffs, so that takes the edge off. But two, the playoffs are the one place where, 2 points or an extra minute that could add 1% of a health risk or injury risk. I am very comfortable and very okay with Shea letting it go and the team letting it go and saying, we're going to put this win in our back pocket and let the regular season streak go on.
Well, Brandon, as you pointed out too, the streak is, and Cray, as you mentioned, the streak is just a regular season streak. And so the 20-point plus streak does continue, right? It's not interrupted at any point by this 18-point performance. And Shea probably knew that. He didn't have to force the issue. He still got a streak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think if this was a regular season and the streak was on the line, he probably would have shot a couple more times and got the 20 just to keep the record going. But no big deal. And look, it's game one, a game they were comfortably going to win the entire game. Like, there was never even doubt. Even when the Lakers jumped out to a 7-0 lead, I don't think a single person in that building, whether they were wearing, the free Thunder T-shirts or whether they were, wearing yellow and gold and purple or whatever, nobody thought the Lakers were winning that game last night.
Yeah, and that was a strange experience for me because the Lakers were competitive, and I think maybe surprisingly competitive through most of the game. The Thunder won every quarter, but it wasn't like they had one of those back-breaking runs against the Lakers. The Lakers always had an answer to sort of keep it within shouting distance. And then LeBron James turned back the clock, and he had a great game with 27 points on 12 of 17 shooting. But at no point was I ever concerned the Thunder were going to lose.
Yeah, that's just the way it felt watching the game. I think you described it perfectly. It was funny because it felt like the Thunder weren't playing up to their usual standards. It felt like the Lakers were being, surprisingly competitive. Like you said, they just barely kind of won every quarter by a handful of points. And yet it just still felt like the Thunder were in fully control. And it felt like if they really needed to, they could flip a switch and crank the defense up to 11. Shea could get more aggressive, scoring, whatever they needed to do to make sure they won that game. And really, I think kind of the most exciting, fun series of the game was when Jared McCain hit those back-to-back three-pointers and the lead ballooned to 19 points. And it was kind of like, felt like the game was over, and Loud City went bonkers. That was a pretty fun series of plays. But other than that, just kind of felt like almost more like a round one playoff series when you look at like the competition level.
I was for a brief moment, I'm a respecter of LeBron James. It doesn't make me too popular with Thunder fans all the time, but I picked a sweep, but I thought if the Lakers were going to pick up a game, it would be game one, just because I am familiar with LeBron's history, as I've been rooting a lot of times, not necessarily for him or the Cavs or the Lakers, but up against juggernauts of playoffs past. Nuggets, Warriors come to mind, where LeBron's team is on paper humongous underdog, but they've got LeBron, and he tends to shoot out of the cannon on those game ones. And sometimes, to me, that to give a little LeBron criticism, it can kind of be a bellwether for whether it seems like he believes in his team's ability to slay the Giants when they're an underdog. But he's just, he's turned in some epic game one performances, and several of them have been ended in his, the most famous one, exasperation with J.R. Smith on a game they could have stole. So anyway, I was, for until it was 7-2, at least, I was like, just hold my breath a little bit. Could this be one of those LeBron games where it's going to go down to the wire and he's really, lifting his team to a level and trying to make it serious? But now that that's passed, I am back to feeling very comfortable, not super worried about the Lakers. It was as expected. It's not as competitive, as hard as the Lakers worked to make it. I think they made it about as competitive as they could have hoped, and it was still pretty much a blowout in the long run. They just don't have the horses and the 48 minutes of players that can compete with OKC.
Especially with the Lakers suffering the injuries that they have. They're out without Luka, and then Jared Vanderbilt suffered that pretty gruesome injury. That's going to put the Lakers at a defensive disadvantage, which they already were at a pretty significant disadvantage there. But I'm going to add more to that. And Brandon, ask for your opinion, from your sense in the arena, just because to me, the feel like it was a playoff game and it had a touch of the playoff atmosphere. And of course it is Thunder Lakers, which is, a pretty marquee matchup, but it almost felt like this was a mid-season matchup against the Charlotte Hornets. Just the energy was not at an 11.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I do want to take this moment to say Thunder fans always bring it. They're always always on their A game. And I'd say pregame, the hype was there. Before tip-off, it got really, really loud. And in that Jared McCain back-to-back threes moment, it really, really popped. But this isn't at all to say that it was a lack of atmosphere from the crowd. It just seemed like the game itself didn't have as much energy as you would expect from a round two playoff game. And that's what I was kind of alluding to before. It just felt like, I agree, more like a really good regular season game. And I think it was because, the Thunder are just so much better and kind of outmatched and out-talented. I don't think there was ever any fear, any nerves that the Thunder might lose. And because of that, maybe it didn't have the same energy. It kind of felt like the Thunder were just taking care of business. So yeah, it was strange. Shea scores 18 points. He had, which never happens, under 20 points. He had 7 turnovers, which literally never happens. That's the most he's had this season. So 2 kind of anomalies happen. LeBron James has an A-plus LeBron game for being 41 years old, and yet the Lakers still lose by 18 points. And I think kind of everybody in that building realizes all those circumstances. Like, hey, Thunder didn't play all that well. LeBron, their best player, played great. Luka is out. The Thunder win by 18 points. And so it just, there was never any, like, if the Lakers would have got up in the third or fourth quarter and the Thunder had to fight back, I think the energy would have, like, gone up. And it would have been like a great, great atmosphere, and it would have been loud, and the Thunder would have had that energy and hyped up the crowd. It just never really happened. When you're up by, 7 to 10 points all game on a team that you're clearly better than, there was just never that moment where the energy just like raised to a 10.
I think you nailed it. That there just wasn't the nervous energy of the game ever being in doubt for the vast majority of the crowd in the arena. And so while I think the energy and the excitement is there, as it always is in Oklahoma City, sort of that nervous energy that builds when it's tense and you're not sure of the outcome, and how it just explodes when the Thunder go on a run or they take a lead. There just weren't moments like that because, again, aside from Cray, to your point, the first few minutes of that game, the Lakers kind of shut out like a cannon and they were off to a really hot start. But once the Thunder came back and asserted their dominance, it's just like a ho-hum. Of course the Thunder were going to win.
And they're going to win the series. It's pretty close to curtains, I think. I sound very cocky, but that's been my theme this season. So far, it's been justified. But yeah, I think not going to be a lot more drama the rest of the way. Maybe in LA, and maybe if the Thunder are their rest continues all the way into Game 3. But we're at an every other day schedule now, and I just don't see it happening.
Well, let's talk about some of the individual performances. As we noted, Shea didn't have a Shea-like game. I mean, he still picked his spots and had an impact. He had 6 assists in addition to those 18 points. But to me, the real star of the game, and it's pretty obvious, was Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren started out really hot. He was really assertive offensively. He wasn't afraid to take some shots, including some tough shots. But there were many points in the game where the Lakers just kind of forgot to defend Chet, and he had some easy dunks. But Chet was pivotal in this game. And truly, I think without J-Dub for many of these games, as he continues to come back from his injury, Chet is probably the key to whether the Thunder can repeat as champion.
Yeah, Chet was awesome. 24 points, 2 of 2 from 3. The 12 rebounds were big. 3 blocks, no goaltends, by the way. They were all ethical blocks. He had a steal. Chet was just awesome. And really, the Lakers don't have an answer for Chet. And his trajectory continues to go up, and he continues to get better and better. And he was asked about it in the postgame last night. And he said that, he felt like he had stretches last playoffs where he played well, but this year his body feels so much better and he just feels more confident when he's out there. And you can see it. He looks so impactful on both sides of the floor. Obviously what he does defensively, he's one of the 2 best defenders in the world. And then offensively, he can shoot it from 3. He can finish at the rim and can score in the paint. He's finishing all these lobs. The team's gotten better about, about giving him lobs to finish. He's even scoring in the mid-range, and with his little turnaround fadeaway, he's just becoming all the things that we all envisioned Chet could possibly be. And he just turned 24 a few days ago. So he's going to continue to get better. And it feels like the Thunder's ceiling is whatever Chet's ceiling is. Like, the Thunder had the best player in the world in Shea. They have all these elite role players and defenders. They have J-Dub, and obviously when J-Dub's out there, it's like another ceiling type of thing. He takes them to another level. But it feels like Chet's the one that still has this room to grow, and his ceiling is so high. And as he continues to reach that ceiling, the Thunder are going to continue to reach new heights and reach new ceilings.
Yeah, and I'm gonna all praise to Chet. I'm a total believer. He can't get. He doesn't have a lot of defensive leaps left in him at this point, but I do think he has plenty of ceiling to grow into on the offensive side. And I'm gonna do a little plug for Shea, even though it was by his standards, a disappointing game, especially the turnovers. But Chet is feasting in the soft backside of the Lakers defense, and Shea is creating such gravity. He is on par in the playoff. It's gone up in the playoffs. Both the Suns and the Lakers are basically starting with a kind of soft zone and someone on Shea full court, and then as soon as he gets to any corner or anywhere inside the arc, they're sending at least one more defender, if not two, if not three, in desperation to close him off. And of course, that leaves it's not to stop his three ball from going up like Steph Curry back in the day, but it is to stop him from getting one step inside the arc and getting to his pull up, or getting around the corner and getting the rim. And it is the stats are insane. The gravity that he is drawing from these teams. I'm curious if as the competition gets better, if all teams will be that desperate as their plan A to throw the kitchen sink at Shea from minute one of game one. But as of now, Chet is all about okay, they're gonna flood the zone and stack up front. I'm gonna be an opportunist. I'm gonna be ready for the ball swing. I'm gonna be ready to cut and dive and clean up on the offensive glass when folks are out of position, trying to stop that incredible, unstoppable Shea shot from going in. So he is capitalizing. And although, again, Shea only has 18 points, which many players would be very happy about in a playoff game, he is definitely, even if it's not assists, creating so much space and opportunities for his teammates, even if he's not touching the ball. He's just drawing that kind of attention and softening things up for everyone else.
Yeah, and I think Shea will clean up some of his turnovers going forward. I think he was forcing the issue a few times. But Shea, he's always going to make the right play. And when those teams throw those doubles and those high traps on him, he's not going to try to force the issue. He's going to make the right basketball play. Unfortunately, I think he just tried a little bit too hard in some situations last night and had an uncharacteristic night in turnovers, but just really can't predict that happening again. But on the flip side, and I was reading some of the Lakers Reddit, and while most of them, can see reality, there were many Lakers fans who were like, well, we would have won this game if Austin Reeves didn't shoot 3 of 16. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, did Austin Reeves shoot 3 of 16 because he was off, or did Austin Reeves shoot 3 of 16 because of Cason Wallace and Alex Caruso and Lou Dort and AJ Mitchell's defense and this swarming Thunder defense? Like, Austin has struggled against this Thunder defense, even when he was healthy earlier this season, and really just historically against this Thunder defense. Now, obviously, he's coming back from injury. He's only been back a few games, and he missed a month, so you got to grant some grace there. But I just don't know if we're going to see the fully healthy version of Austin Reeves in this series. If he's not there yet, like, is he going to be there tomorrow? Is he going to be there in 3 days? So this might just be the version of Austin Reeves that we get, and he's still going to have to go up against this elite historic Thunder defense. So yeah, he's going to shoot better than he shot last night. But is he going to be his typical, efficient self against this defense and being compromised with this injury? I would assume not. And also he's with no Luka, he's getting that much more defensive attention because it's really just Reeves and LeBron who are the playmakers, shot creators for this team now. And so they're going to get that defensive attention. So I think it's going to be a rough series for Austin Reeves.
Yeah, and on Austin Reeves specifically, I do think many Lakers fans just have lost faith in Austin Reeves that he's going to be a contributor in this playoffs. And I just wanted to take some of those sunshine pumpers who do exist over in Lakers Reddit, which I do think there are probably a lot of them because they just have this opinion of the franchise and everything that it should be given because it's the Lakers. And putting a lot of blame that, Reeves had a bad game, but you turn that around and the Lakers can close the gap on the Thunder. You get Luka back, and if they had Luka, this wouldn't even be the series. That kind of optimistic thinking from Lakers fans. And maybe there is some truth to that if Reeves has a solid game and he's not shooting 3 of 15, and he's 10 of 15, he's going to the line, it's a different outcome. But at the same time, we also witnessed Shea struggle with 7 turnovers and 8 of 15 shooting. 18 15 is pretty good, but 7 turnovers. AJ Mitchell was 7 of 16. The Thunder, some of their best 3-point shooters, AJ was 1 of 5 from 3. Alex Caruso was 1 of 4 from 3. So those guys could turn it around, and instead of an 18-point Thunder win, it's a 28-point Thunder win.
Yeah, and look, fans of any team are going to gravitate towards, well, if this would have been different, if this would be different. And they do have, a great excuse in Luka being out. He's their MVP candidate. He's a top 5 player in the world. So surely if Luka was healthy, that changes some of, the perspective of the series and how it can go down. But also the Thunder don't have J-Dub, who also is an all NBA player, an all defensive player, an all star. And we saw how, dominant he can be in that first round series in those 2 games, at least against the Suns, and how that gives the Thunder another point of attack perimeter defender, a guy that they can put on LeBron. He would be the main LeBron defender. And oh, by the way, now Lou Dort switches over to Luka. So sure, Austin Reeves could shoot better. Sure, Luka being back would be healthy, but J-Dub could also be back. And bottom line, when the Lakers were healthy in the regular season and they played the Thunder, they were losing by about 75 points per game. So, I understand it from a Lakers fan's perspective. You got to, gravitate towards the reasons and how it could be different. But these 2 teams, when fully healthy, are in just 2 completely different tiers. And the current makeups of these 2 teams, while injured, they're in 2 completely different tiers.
And notwithstanding the scoring troubles for Austin Reeves, the Lakers as a team have a scoring issue. The Thunder put up 108 points last night. The Lakers in this playoffs have only exceeded 108 points once, and they had a 7-game series with the Rockets. Whereas the Thunder, I think, exceeded 108 points in every single first-round game against the Suns. And so even against lesser defensive competition, the Lakers struggle to score. It's just really hard to see that it's about Austin Reeves having an off night is the reason they only put up 90 points. They're just not going to be able to score points against the Thunder defense. And that's where you have that incredible disadvantage and disparity between the 2 teams and why Cray is probably so confident that the Thunder are just going to run away with this series, which is fair. The other thing I wanted to bring up, though, since you can't talk about Thunder without talking about free throws, but I'm not going to talk about it in the way that people may expect. There were 25 total free throws taken in this game. The leading free throw shooter for the Lakers was Luke Kennard, who had 4. Chet had 4. Shea just had 3 free throws all night. Do you think that the officiating was letting a little bit more physicality, or do you think the teams were just playing differently and so you weren't seeing as many free throws?
I'd say a little bit of A, a little bit of B. I do think that the refs were letting a lot of contact go, and we saw that early on. Shea, look, I've seen the social media, the Twitter clips being strung together, and unfortunately, they made their way to like the television networks broadcast, the Colin Cowherds and the Nick Wrights and those guys of the world. I've seen those compilations. It was all in the first quarter, where Shea was driving, and here's the thing: he was getting fouled. Like you know, he was getting fouled early on. They were not calling it. So, you know, I think Shea realized, oh, this is one of those games. They're just not going to call anything. And he adjusted his game. So I think they're letting a lot of contact go was the bigger thing, which is fine. The Thunder are good with that. Like, if anything, that plays into the hands of the Thunder and their defense. So especially against the Lakers, like, for all the talk about the Thunder and the free throws, we all know the Lakers by far and away for the past half decade have led the league in free throw differential, and they get a better whistle than the Thunder do, even without Luka and Austin Reeves in the first round, by the way. So yeah, I think it was mostly that they were just letting it go. And you never know. Game 2, it can be a completely different thing, and we get 60 combined free throws from the two teams.
Yeah, I think I'm very, I've written now 2 long articles about the Shea free throw. I'm not even calling it discourse or narrative anymore, because I believe it is a conspiracy theory that the referees are intentionally easier on Shea and the Thunder, essentially dictated by the league office, because they want Oklahoma City to stay on top, and they want Shea to be a superstar, and all the things that we know as Thunder fans has not been a priority with the league at all, until now the Thunder are champions and are on TV, and I would assume are important to the league, as in Shea being a soon to be 2-time MVP, face of the league, that kind of thing. But it has not been because the league has been in a great hurry to put the Thunder on TV and make sure that the whistle goes in their favor, and make sure that all the things that other teams watching Shea and the Thunder spank their teams, they feel like, how is this happening? And it must be that it's not fair. There's an injustice happening. So I'm doing the thing, John, you said you weren't trying to do, that I am relitigating the free throw debate. But what I will say, what could do a lot more than any of my writing, or any of the Thunder fans fighting the good fight, and either trying to ignore the Shea free throw noise, or by trying to correct it and debunk some of the silly clip making and lazy free throw stats and things that are thrown out there to and accepted by, frankly, people that are not tracking the sport, and how the refs call the game, and how the game's played, and how defense is played, and how offensive scoring happens these days. I think we were never going to get everyone all the way over to our side, but I think the person who might have started to crack open that conspiracy is none other than Jaylen Brown, who has been one of the biggest proponents of that, and just got fined, I believe it was $50,000, for saying on his stream after he lost that, blaming the refs, blaming his opponents for flopping, and complaining that he didn't get enough foul calls, and that he was called for offensive fouls. He used the word, he said, I think, that referees told him that there's an agenda against him, which definitely didn't happen. So anyway, but I think, for him to do that after a really disappointing, embarrassing Celtics loss, the very popular consensus is that, okay, Jaylen, you're just, be humble, accept responsibility, take accountability, do not complain about the refs, don't compare yourselves and whine about not getting everyone else's refs. So I think he had, and then also, honestly, maybe a little bit of that game 1 Wemby, with all of the, pretty obvious to casual viewers goaltends and fouls that ended up adding up to the modern league record for blocks in a playoff game that was very much celebrated on the broadcast, but a lot of fans are, I think, starting to see some counter examples, maybe that, I think a first pass, if Wimby says that he's ethical and Jaylen Brown says the Thunder Shea gets too many whistles, they might agree in passing. But then when they're seeing it up close and watching a little bit closer and seeing those same kind of excuses and assertions being made, I think the tide might be, I don't want to be too optimistic, but might be turning a little bit and be like, wait a second, there's a lot of fouls called. There's a lot of grifting, flopping, foul hunting, drives, physical play, physical defense. And I think maybe finally we're starting to get a little bit of, it's not a conspiracy. There's not a singular mission by the NBA just to benefit Oklahoma City with the whistle. That might be an optimistic thing, but I am hopeful that the popular tide is maybe starting to turn.
Well, Cray, you did take us on the tangent that I was not intending for us to go down because, the free throw conversation it seems like anything anybody wants to talk about if you're not an Oklahoma City fan, which is a little bit annoying. So I'm not calling you bringing it up annoying, but since we've gone down that path, I do want to mention two things that I think you're right about. One, the idea that there's a conspiracy in favor of Oklahoma City has got to be the most ridiculous conspiracy that I've ever heard in my entire life. Because if the NBA had their way, wouldn't they want a Lakers-Knicks finals or a Lakers-Boston finals? Like, that's going to bring in the most viewership. Those are the marquee teams in the league that have history and tradition, and would be incredible to see LeBron in what could be his final season against the historic New York Knicks and Madison Square Garden. They're not creating a narrative or a story so that Oklahoma City wins championships. That's absolutely ridiculous. And the other thing I'm just going to add to people who want to keep talking about the free throws is that aside from Chris Finch, the only people who complain about officiating are the teams that lose.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that when teams lose. And it's not just against the Thunder now. It's loudest against the Thunder. Those are the tweets that go viral. That's what's talked about on the networks and things like that from talking heads, because I think that's what gets the most engagement, because the Thunder are the champs. Shea is the 2-time MVP, soon to be, and all those things. But like Cray said, you're starting to see Jaylen Brown talk about it more. You're starting to see other players, other coaches, other teams talking about the officiating and the reffing, kind of no matter who they're playing now. If they lose, it's just becoming like a bit of a crutch. It seems like no matter what happens, watch any of these playoff games, go to like that team's fan base, look in their comment section, go to the post-game interviews with the players or coaches. Whistles, refs, foul calls are being used more and more, it seems, as reasons why so-and-so fill-in-the-blank team lost.
Well, Cray, you also mentioned...
Close the loop a little bit on the whistle and the Lakers, I will say JJ Redick has not been... I'm trying to think of the word. He has not been shy about complaining about the refs this season. He has had public beef with the refs, but I respect the way he is angling into the playoff series with the Thunder. So he's been all praise. All the Lakers have been all praise for the Thunder, and him especially giving high praise on how great the Thunder are. And his line is that, they're so good at defense, they're so physical, they're so great. And he says straight face saying, and they never foul. They don't foul. So we gotta, prepare that this team is going to be this good and they don't foul. And I think probably most people would read that as kind of a little bit of a subliminal, like, they do foul, they just don't get called for it enough. But I respect his approach to that, a little more subtle, a little bit of seeding of working the refs, because usually, the Chris Finch route is saved for game 3 and you're down 2-0, or game 5 and you're down 3-1, and you're desperate and you want to call the refs and the public viewing attention to the one guy that's killing you. And that's when you keep your powder dry to say, I need some kind of edge to try to keep up and try to survive this series. But they've just been doing it, like Brandon's saying, as a crutch after every loss, every failure, everything. It comes up so much that I think people are drowning it out and tuning it out. So anyway, I appreciate JJ Redick. I think still trying to do some gamesmanship on trying to work the rest a little bit and playing his flag on we're paying attention to the foul calls, but not doing it the crybaby way, doing it in kind of with that damning with false praise or passive aggressive nature. I think that's what he's up to. I don't think he'll change anything, but I can at least say I respect that much more than the Chris Finch approach.
Well, since we're talking about Chris Finch, I want to pivot and talk about the other Western Conference series between the Wolves and the Spurs. And the Wolves shocked some people to come out with a Game 1 win and overcame the 12 blocks by Victor Wembanyama, 9 of which were either fouls or goaltends, but which led to Chris Finch whining post game. And I'm probably exaggerating at the 9, but you've seen the clips. There's a lot of questionable calls there on the goaltends that Wemby was awarded. But should we overreact or underreact to the Wolves taking Game 1?
I think the Wolves were legit. I think that this is a true 50-50 coin toss series now. All the pressure is on the Spurs. They are young, inexperienced. We talk about it every postseason, it seems, with the new young hot team and how you got to take your lumps in the playoffs and can this team be the exception? And of course, the Thunder have kind of been the exception, but even then, they did have to lose to the Mavs a couple years ago when they were the 1 seed, and they far exceeded all timelines by winning the championship when they did last year. But still, the Spurs team hasn't taken any lumps in the playoffs. So now they're down 0-1 to a Wolves team that beat the Nuggets. Nobody expected that. And the Wolves have just been so impressive. They dominated the Nuggets the first 4 games, and then they lose they lose Dante DiVincenzo, and then in that last game they didn't have Ayo, and they still beat the Nuggets, closed them out. So impressive. And then to go in with Ant on minutes restriction and no Dante DiVincenzo and no Ayo and beat this Spurs team that was at home double-digit favorites that have been dominant, I don't think it's a fluke. I think the Wolves are for real. Everybody forgets that they've gone to the Western Conference Finals 2 straight seasons. They're kind of a playoff riser as a team. We talk about playoff risers or playoff fallers all the time as individual players, but it seems like as a team, they're better in the playoffs. Maybe they're just kind of built for the playoffs with their defense and physicality, but also having some guys like Ant who can raise your offense. So I think that this is going to be a good long battle, and I don't think it's a fluke. I think I would not be surprised at all to see the Wolves win this series. I wouldn't be surprised, of course, to see the Spurs come back and win this series. But the Wolves are legit. I'll say that.
Yeah, I had the Wolves. No, sorry, I had the Spurs in 7 as my prediction for this series before I knew that Anthony Edwards would be back in Game 1. I expected him back earlier than projected, but I didn't know it was going to be their Game 1. I'm going to stick with Spurs in 7. I do think they'll overcome, but I think it's a very close series. And I've been accused of being a Wemby and Spurs hater, which is true, but I don't think it requires being a hater to say that the Spurs are not just going to cakewalk. Like they haven't been in the playoffs. If you compare them to like an early riser, a very similar team would be the Thunder the last couple seasons. And we know very well that, you can be a dominant team and just the playoffs are crazy. The best teams of all time don't sweep every round, even if they're legitimately the greatest team on earth. But also just, when it's new and you're inexperienced, it's not a critique, but you don't know until you know, and you're not a veteran playoff performer until you're a veteran playoff performer, and you've not had the pressure of those last second possessions where not everyone is on the same page on timeouts and or shot clock and game clock like they experienced against the Wolves when they had a chance to pull that one from the fire. So I don't feel like super negative about the Spurs, but I have always expected them to have some hurdles to clear and not just once they got to the Thunder. I assume they would have a legitimate, they already dropped one to the Blazers, and now they've dropped one to the Wolves, and I think that is to be expected. And so I'll still stick with the expectation that we'll see them in the Western Conference Finals. But no, I think it's totally legit, and I think the Wolves are legit, and we'll continue to put up a fight.
Yeah, I agree that the Wolves are legit, and a game one win certainly bolsters that argument. On the other hand, I'd say you have to avoid reading too much into game ones of a 7-game series. The Thunder famously lost game one last season to the Nuggets, fell behind 2-1, and won that series in 7. The Thunder lost game one of the NBA Finals and fell behind 2-1 and ended up winning that series. And so I think, to your point, Brandon, what losing game one probably did was take a 55-45 series in favor of the Spurs and now tip it into 50-50. Right now, this looks more like this one could go the distance as a 7-game series, which is kind of what I thought was likely possible here with this, if Ant came back. And that's kind of what's bearing out. The Wolves got one. They have stolen home court, but the Spurs are very talented. They won all those games for a reason, and it's quite likely we're going to have a very tough, competitive 7-game series, unlike probably what we're expecting from the Thunder-Lakers series. But maybe we'll kind of wrap this up with some quick playoff predictions with the other playoff series. But first, we'll start with ours. Seeing what you guys have seen from game one, and Cray, you predicted a Thunder sweep. Brandon, you predicted Thunder in 5. Anything from game one that would cause you to change your predictions?
Nothing necessarily from game one, other than it felt like LeBron had an A game and Shea had, to his standards, a below average game, obviously, and the Thunder won by 18 points. And it's like, what could the Lakers do to even steal a game here? You feel like when they go back to LA, obviously, maybe they can steal one. I would say more so than the game itself. Luka's comments today that the original timeline on his hamstring strain was actually 8 weeks. That just dropped right before we recorded this podcast. And hearing that makes me feel like, okay, Luka really may not come back this series. Of course, he's going to try to. Of course, he's a competitor. But if the Thunder go up 2-0, 3-0, are they really going to rush him back when you're obviously such a huge underdog and the odds are completely against you? Like, why risk that injury and make it possibly a long-term thing when the odds are so stacked against you? So given what we saw in game one, and given that I don't believe that Luka will be back this series, I think I would like to switch from 5 games to a sweep.
Ooh. Cray, I assume you're sticking with 4.
Wake me up when Luka comes back. I'm sticking with 4 until further notice.
Okay, well, I'll be the dark cloud on this podcast. I'm going to stick with my Thunder in 5 prediction. Who knows what's going to happen in LA? Other series in the Western Conference, Wolves-Spurs. We were just talking about it. Brandon and then Cray. What are your predictions for that series now after game 1?
I'm going to go. It still feels like the Spurs are probably going to win, but I am rooting for the Wolves to win just because it's been so impressive what they've done. It's easy to root for them as the underdog and as being this injured team that nobody believes in. And yeah, I'm going to say Wolves. I'm going to say Wolves in 6. I don't know if I believe that, but that's what I'm going to say.
That's a take. Cray?
I love that. I was on the fence. I was like, I'm gonna switch. I'll do. You know what? I'll stick with Spurs in 7, and I'll say I find the Wolves to be more likable. I'm definitely not rooting for the Spurs, but I also, back to my theme of being cocky, I'm not terrified of seeing the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. So I would be rooting for a long series either way. And if I have my druthers, I think I want a shot at being the one to extinguish some of that Wemby hype and Spurs hype directly, and seeing the Thunder advance head to head against a team that so many people have assumed and projected to be better than the Thunder because of a handful of regular season games. So I'm going to stick with Spurs in 7, and I will be okay with that outcome, but mainly rooting for a long series and not super worried about who it is that advances as far as their chances against OKC.
Yeah, I would agree with Spurs in 7 and Cray. I also echo your internal struggle. We know the Thunder can beat the Wolves. We saw it last year in a 4-1 series as the Thunder advanced to the NBA Finals. So I think the Thunder match up very well against the Wolves. And then to your other point, I kind of do like the idea of the Thunder being the one to take out the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. But I do worry that if the Spurs advance to the Western Conference Finals, especially if Wemby has a series where he's averaging, 10 goaltends a game that aren't called, that the hype on Wemby, even if he comes up a bit short, that all the commentary in the postseason and into next season is going to be Wemby's ready to take the next step, right? They've made it to the Western Conference Finals. They just didn't have the experience, but now they've been battle tested. They went up against the defending champs. They came up a bit short, but it's Wemby's league now. It's Wemby's time now, and I'm not ready for that. It's still SGA's league.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Look, Jokic held the title for a few years. I think it's been clear that Shea's been the best player in the NBA for a couple of seasons now. And I think that he retains that title. And Wemby is coming, obviously. But as we saw in game 1 against a tough Wolves team, his offense just is not there yet. As great as a defender as he is, and he's a great defender, and he's a very good offensive player. But to take the belt, you've got to be an elite offensive player as well. As much as everybody says, there's two sides of the court, and obviously there is. That's important. But in basketball these days, to be the best player in the world, you have to be an elite offensive player. It weighs more than the defensive side does. And Wemby is just not there yet. He's not on the level offensively as Shea, Jokic, Luka, Giannis, and those guys. So Shea is the best in the world, and I think that will play out, for the rest of these playoffs. We'll see. If the Thunder and Spurs do battle in the Western Conference Finals, I think it'll be a great series. And regardless of the outcome, I would still expect Shea to be the best player on the floor either way.
And to close this out, let's go ahead and jump in over to the Eastern Conference Series, which I know, Brandon, it doesn't get you quite as excited as what's going on in the West. And Craig, we'll start with you. Let's go with the predictions for those other two series in the East.
So I'm going to say Sixers in 6 and Pistons in 7 is my call for the Eastern Conference Finals. I've already lost my Celtics pick for the finals. That was an abysmal pick, it turns out. So I just kind of think the Pistons are going to edge out the Cavaliers. And frankly, I don't think the Sixers are technically better than the Knicks, but I don't enjoy hype train successful Knicks. I like seeing it teeter out much earlier than some of their most exuberant fans tend to get. So I'm also a softie for the process Sixers. So those are my picks for the East.
All right, Brandon, drop your picks for the Eastern Conference matchups.
For the East, I got Pistons in 7. I think that's going to be a close one. And I got Knicks in 5. Joel Embiid is not playing in game 2. I think the Knicks go up 2-0. They look dominant in the first game. I think the 76ers take one in Philly, but the Knicks just look much better.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm going to say Pistons in 7, though. I think the Cavs are going to make that one a series, despite the game 1 loss. And then I've got the Knicks over the Sixers in 5.
Same.
All right. Well, we have got a great pod here covering game 1. And hey, there's a lot more to talk about because the Thunder are still in this and still a lot more games to go and some pretty late nights for me, some pretty normal nights for Brandon, who stays up till 3 a.m. on the reg. But these kind of 8:30, 9:30 tips, I'm going to be tired, but that's okay. It's what you do for the Thunder.
It's true. I'm excited about the rest of the series. I know that game 1 may not have had the pop that a typical Thunder Lakers featuring LeBron James in round 2 would seem like it would have, but I expect some more entertaining and fun games the rest of the series, even if the Thunder end up sweeping or winning in 5. I think we got some fun games ahead.
That's a great place to end the show, and that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and today we have Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer, and Cray, Allred, Daily Thunder editor-in-chief. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back in your feed soon.